Welcome to this continuation of the Horrorbox podcast. And we're finally going to get into the other two sequels of VHS. So hopefully you guys have been dying to hear this. Hopefully you guys have been watching some videos and not turning into zombies. And maybe you guys aren't going out and exploring and filming all this stuff yourself and running into zombies or monsters or serial killers or what have you. I kid. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, no. How are you guys? Hopefully you guys are good. I've been pretty good. Like I had said in the previous episode, on the news episode, it's been just a little bit to get, going just because I have a new work schedule, and it was tough getting adjusted to that, and like some other stuff. I had family over and stuff, and it's just kind of hard to get these recordings done when there's a lot of people around, and they constantly talk, and they constantly are loud, and you keep shushing them, but they're like, "Oh, come on, we want to talk and this blah 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 too." So you work with them as much as you can, and you try and get this stuff out for people to listen to. You try to stay consistent, but it's just a little hard sometimes. I'm not complaining. I'm not, and nothing like that. I'm just saying that it's just hard sometimes. Just so bear with me as we get this going again. I'm hoping to get this done and then get out a couple more episodes before Christmas. So hopefully we'll be able to jam pack this in. So yeah. Why don't we just get straight into VHS Viral?
Where did you find that tape?
Secret compartment. He recorded everything.
See you on YouTube.
Welcome to the show.
Oh my god, turn it off. It's not funny.
Keep going. We can edit that out.
Get inside, it's not safe out here. Oh, daze your ass if you don't get inside right now.
VHS Viral is a 2014 American anthology horror film from Bloody Disgusting. The film is the third in the VHS franchise, created by Brad Miska. It features a series of found footage shorts written and directed by Nacho Vigalondo, Marcel Scarmiento, Greg Bishop, Justin Benson, and Aaron Scott Moorhead. So for this film, it opens with, so the wraparound story for this one is called Vicious Circles, and that is what ties everything together. So it's directed by Marcel Sarmiento, and this is what ties the whole thing together, all the found footage stories. So it starts with Kevin, an amateur videographer, constantly shooting footage of his girlfriend, Iris. And at first she claims to kind of like enjoy it, but she starts getting annoyed and concerned that he's being obsessed with her filming her. And it becomes apparent later that Kevin lives with an abusive grandmother who at one point bloodies his nose off screen. Later that night, the high-speed pursuit of an ice cream truck arrives in his neighborhood. Kevin witnesses the chase as a broadcast on television and sees the opportunity to create a viral video. He is too late to shoot footage, watching the truck speed past his house, though he sees Iris wandering outside in a daze after receiving a mysterious video call, then disappearing when his back is turned. After witnessing the truck run over a cop that had asked him to back away from the road, Kevin chases after the truck, egged on by images of panicking Iris broadcast to his cell phone. Kevin's continued pursuit of the truck as it repeatedly circles the neighborhood, carries on through the film, during which people receive strange images on their cell phones that cause them to become violently insane. And then we get into the first segment, Dante the Great, which is directed and written by Greg Bishop. So this one is partially framed as an investigative documentary with interviews of magic experts, theater critics, law enforcement officials, and the main character interspersed throughout the story. John McMullen, a trailer park resident and untalented illusionist, discovers a cloak that was once owned by Harry Houdini. John discovers that wearing the cloak grants him the power to perform actual magic, taking on the stage name Dante the Great. John uses his newfound abilities to perform in front of a large audience, becoming immensely famous. However, John learns that the cloak requires regular human sacrifices to work. To that end, he hires a series of female assistants and videotapes them as he utters an incantation and watches the cloak devour them. He uses his powers to summon and kill Clay Bolan, the abusive boyfriend of Scarlet K, his latest assistant. When Scarlet discovers John's collection of tapes in a secret compartment in his dressing room, she alerts the police. Though John is able to use his powers to escape custody, as she is interrogated by a detective, John uses his newfound powers to summon her from the police station. A SWAT team bursts in to arrest John, but John manages to use his magic to kill all of them. He proceeds to duel with Scarlet over the magic cloak, though Scarlet is briefly able to take it from him. John overpowers her and recovers it. Before John can kill her, Scarlet uses a trick he taught her to immobilize him, prompting the cloak to feed on him instead. Scarlet burns the cloak, only to find it in her house, hanging on her closet door. As she investigates it, a pair of demonic arms reach out from inside the cloak and grab her. So this is the first interlude from Vicious Circles. Getting back to the frame story, Kevin and the police continue to pursue the truck. A group of teenagers attempt to film the chase from atop a nearby bridge, with one of them staring at his phone in a trance while his nose bleeds. Another one of the teenagers ends up slipping and falling from the bridge when he gets too close, being run over in the process. Kevin is halted by a group of cyclists, but they end up helping him pursue the truck when one of them is caught on it, has his feet shredded to the bone, and is ultimately killed. Despite this, Kevin continues his mission to save Iris. The film transitions to the next segment. This next segment is called Parallel Monsters, and it's directed and written by Nacho Vigalondo. In Spain, Alfonso, an inventor, works late on his newest project, promising his wife Marta that he will come up to bed soon. His project is revealed to be a prototype interdimensional portal. Upon activating the portal, it opens to reveal what appears to be his garage. Alfonso witnesses a copy of himself look at him from the other side, revealing the portal has successfully opened a gateway to a parallel world. The two versions of Alfonso cautiously greet each other, overcome by curiosity, and discover that they appear to be completely identical. The two agree to trade places and cross through the portal with their own cameras to explore and document each other's worlds for 15 minutes. As the main Alfonso explores the alternate version of his house, it would seem the two worlds are exact mirrored duplicates. The main Alfonso encounters the parallel version of Marta, who introduces him to two men named Oriol. In the living room, a pornographic snuff film plays on the television, and a sack of organs is displayed on the center of the room. The parallel Marta prompts Alfonso to perform a ceremony with the Oreos. Disturbed, the main Alfonso leaves the house and witnesses a large blimp with an inverted cross that blares demonic chanting, revealing the two worlds hold different dominant religions. When he attempts to record the blimp, he gets spotted by the two Oreos, who chase Alfonso before catching him. Their eyes and mouths turn bright red, and one of the Oreos takes his pants off to reveal that he has a fanged creature in place of his penis. Back in the main world, the parallel Alfonso discovers the main Marta asleep, growing aroused, and taking photos of her before unveiling his own monstrous genitalia, scaring Marta awake. In the parallel world, the main Alfonso manages to stab the Oreo's penis with a screwdriver and flees back to the house, where the parallel Marta takes off her robe to reveal that she is similarly demonic vagina. Terrified, Alfonso punches her and flees back to his world. The parallel Alfonso, covered in blood after his encounter with the main Marta, stabs his normal self. The parallel Marta appears and devours the parallel Alfonso with her fanged vagina before the main Alfonso closes the portal. The main version of Marta, also covered in blood, stabs Alfonso to death after thinking that he savagely attacked her. So this is the second interlude of Vicious Circles. Returning to the frame story again, Kevin continues to pursue the truck as it continues to circle the neighborhood, begging the police to help him save Iris. Meanwhile, a group of Hispanic gangbangers are holding a barbecue to celebrate one of their own being released from prison. Seeing the police helicopter that has been broadcasting the chase, one of them assumes that his girlfriend has turned him in. Suddenly, the music playing on the radio warps and turns operatic, causing the guests of honor to become violent and murder the others by stabbing them with forks. As the truck and Kevin pass, it is revealed that a gas tank has erupted in the chaos, causing the party to go up in an enormous fireball. And that's when the film transitions to the last segment, Bone Storm, which is directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Scott Moorhead, written by Justin Benson. Jason and Danny are a pair of skateboarders in Los Angeles who perform various stunts in the hopes of creating an epic skateboard video. The videographer they hired, Taylor, pushes them into increasingly dangerous circumstances in the hopes that they injure or kill themselves so he can film the aftermath and sell it as a snuff film. After they start a fight at a local skate park, the skaters become bored. Taylor suggests they continue the film shoot in Tijuana, remembering that he heard about a prime skating location for them to finish their video. Taylor calls out to their friend, Sean, and rope him into joining him in their trip to Mexico by paying for everything with his dad's credit card. After enjoying themselves and buying fireworks, the skaters subsequently become lost and run into a mysterious woman. Once they find a suitable place, an old flood channel, Taylor encourages them to perform more stunts. When one of the skateboarders injures himself and bleeds on a large pentagram drawn on the ground, his blood quickly boils, despite the apparent normal temperature of the pavement on which the pentagram is drawn. The skaters discover the woman they met earlier standing nearby as Taylor introduces himself and offers to film her. She suddenly tears his arm off. Immediately after, a group of cloaked cultists who are using the channel as a site for demonic worship discover the skaters and attack them. Using a pistol and their skateboards, the skateboarders kill the cultists, though Taylor is set on fire and Sean is killed in the fight. As a demonic roar sounds, the dead cultists rise as reanimated skeletons and mount a second attack. During the second attack, Jason and Danny use the fireworks they bought earlier to destroy several of the skeletons. The two proceed to skate back toward the border as the creature the cultists were attempting to summon appears from a storm drain. The creature eats the wounded Taylor along with his camera. And this is the third interlude of Vicious Circles. So getting back to the frame story, Kevin's still chasing the truck, at one point encountering a woman in a trance with her nose bleeding. The news broadcasting the chase is warning that several fires have broken out across the city. Kevin tries to get a taxi cab to stop, but the driver refuses to. The driver also helps his friend, a porn director, film a striptease with a young woman in the back seat. Suddenly, the woman pulls a gun on him, revealing that the director had previously been sold pornographic footage of her by her ex, and the exposure had apparently ruined her life. She forces him to strip by threatening to shoot his crotch. The director fights back, strangling her, but all three are killed when a police car flips through the air and crushes the taxi. And the film transitions to the epilogue. Vicious Circles, epilogue. At dawn, Kevin finally catches up to the truck. He finds it sitting in the empty river basin he had been filming Iris near the beginning of the film, with body parts strewn around all on the ground. He examines the driver's seat only to find it empty and a pair of disembodied hands duct taped to the wheel. Upon examining the back of the truck, he finds a number of televisions stacked atop each other, as in the first two movies. Iris appears on one of the TV screens and demands that Kevin upload the footage to broadcasters and the internet as well. At first he refuses, mentioning that the videos are causing people all over the city to go insane, and when Iris begins to brutally mutilate herself, he relents and pushes a button labeled Upload. With the deed done, he exits the truck as the image of Iris on the screen continues to taunt him. Outside, he discovers Iris, having actually been dead for some time, slumped against the truck with her cell phone stuck in her mouth. Kevin pulls the phone out of her mouth and sees that it's in selfie mode. He stares in shock at himself on the screen with his nose bleeding, implying he is infected by the videos as well. The closing shot of the film, set to an operatic score, is a view of the LA skyline, smoke blowing up, lights flickering on and off, and a helicopter circling around overhead, revealing the uploaded videos have gone viral and have begun to affect thousands, thus fulfilling the grandeur threat introduced in the first two films. Alright, so let's get into this a little bit. This movie has a lot of problems. I will say that the second segment has some great. I mean, even the first segment has like a good idea. It's just the way that they did it was like meh. And the second story too, like this, exploring parallel dimensions, like that sounds pretty cool. Or like the cloak having like real magic. That sounds pretty cool. Like those, when you say like the basic of it, like the stories, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. But then you get to the movie and you're like, oh. And what kind of sucks too is that like I love Justin Benson and Aaron Scott Moorhead. Their films are awesome. If you haven't seen Resolution or The Endless, go see those movies. I think they're still on Amazon. I know The Endless might have been on Netflix, but their movies are amazing, and I love that they connect together. They're kind of like companion stories. I love that when people do that. And I would love to just talk about those movies, but those are like good movies, and I don't want to talk about them right now. The first time I saw this, I was let down because there's only 3 stories. The wraparound story is stupid. Honestly, I'm just gonna flat out say that it's dumb. It's trying to do like this kind of meta thing with viral and things going viral and this and that, but it just doesn't work with like the world that was created before. Like, kind of, but not really. Like, I mean, I understand that like, okay, the whole thing with like the nosebleeds and like putting them into trances and making them do this, but that's not really what it was about. It was more about like making these films or videotaping these things and showing. I don't know. Maybe me and everyone else lost the point of what they were trying to do with this wraparound story, but unfortunately, it just didn't click, and I don't really know what to do with that. I mean, it just started with them filming like the girl, and we get like this hint that like he's being abused, but that goes nowhere. It's just not brought up again. Has nothing to do with the rest of the story. Even like the stuff with like her like taunting him in the end and like being, so it's like, so that was recorded before or that's being broadcast now. But then I don't know. See, it's like I like confusing and weird things, but this one was just like, you're trying to be weird for no reason. You're trying to be out like where you could have just been. It could have been a simple, and I think they were trying to just make this like a like grander thing than what the first two were. And it's like, I understand that, but you're not getting it across. Where I think, at least with the second one, you know, it was trying to tie itself to the first one. This one just was like, yeah, well, if we show some videos of it on a TV screen in the back of the truck, that's it. That's connected, right? That means it's all tied together. And you didn't really need to do that. Because I'll talk about that when we get to the next one. But there's just like so many things. Like, okay, like with let's just start with the first one, the first segment with the magic cloak, right? It's like, it's not just one continuous take. Like, so everything we've gotten before has been one continuous video shot from one point of view. This time, it's like spliced together. So it's like, so then who's splicing this together? Two, how are you getting all this footage? And I know, like, you really shouldn't be poking holes in like logic in a horror film, but it's kind of weird and doesn't fit the other, like, because I know this film kind of feels like it needs another segment, because it actually does have another one. There's one that was shot, and I guess they put it at the very end of all the credits because it just didn't fit with like their like theme, I guess. So it was called Gorgeous Vortex. It was directed by Todd Lincoln and written by him as well. So it's a surreal short with no dialogue that follows a sinister, shadowy organization that is tracking a serial killer. And that's literally all we have about it. It was cut last minute since it did not fit well with the overall theme of the film. Mostly cut because it was due to not being found footage. And I feel like that's what the problem is with that first one. It's like it doesn't feel like found footage. It just feels like, oh, we're shooting a movie and it happens to have this magic. And then, oh, yeah, let's put in this anthology called VHS. And it's like we've gotten more, like, I understand that, like, the second one kind of removed us from the VHS look, I guess. I mean, they even did in the first one, too, but everything was on VHS. These segments just start up. There's no one watching them. They're just, like, it goes from, like, oh, where's that ice cream truck going? Where's it going? Let's follow it. And then it plays the segment, and it's like, oh, okay. And I mean, it, like I said, it has interesting ideas. Like, I like the idea of, like, ooh, magic being real, and, like, oh, the cape needing to feed. And then, like, it just is, I don't know. Like, it's fine. The second one, I think, the parallel dimension one, I think it works pretty okay. Except, like, there's so many things that are left open, and, like, you're kind of like, well, what about that? What the hell was that? And it's like, and I'm usually great with, and I agree with, like, you know, keeping things vague sometimes, but then there's times where it's like, okay, yeah, like, the whole point of, like, the parallel dimension is to show, like, the differences, right? But you're just kind of like, oh, look at the blimp. It's playing satanic music. It's an upside down cross. And then all of a sudden there's monsters. And it's like, okay, that's kind of cool, but, like, what? They look exactly the same, and then all of a sudden now, oh, there's monsters. Monsters where their genitalia should be. It's weird. But, I mean, I like that. I think, like, the weirdness is kind of cool. I just wish it would explain itself a little bit more, maybe. Like, get a little bit more into, like, the differences and, like, why, maybe. I don't know. I mean, normally I don't like that, but I don't know. For this, it was just like maybe it was needed a little bit. Maybe just someone, like, maybe him and, like, the guys are out there and they're like, yeah, like, this is what we do when we, you know, want to mate or something. I don't know. And, like, oh yeah, the blimp, like, you know, the blimp. You know, I don't know, or it was like not acknowledge it. They just make it seem like it's not even really there. And then the one that I feel like has the most, not that I think the second one has the most potential, but this third one, like, to me personally, because it's two creators that I really love, and I feel like they dropped the ball on this one. Because this one is more of, like, the found footage-y kind of, but then at the end where, like, the monster eats the camera, so it's like, okay, so then how did you get the footage? And again, it's one of those things like, stop poking holes in the start, but I just can't with this. Like, it was just kind of dumb. Like, okay, like, these obnoxious kids who forced this other kid to use their dad's credit card, and then they go to Mexico, and then, like, I love the idea. That's what I'm saying. It's like these ones, the ideas are so creative. Like, I like the idea of, like, oh, it's this ritual, and these people, they're coming back as, like, these zombie skeleton things. But it's just, like, I just don't, like, you don't care for the characters. They just are assholes. And it's just done, like, meh. You don't even see, I wish you would even see, like, part of the monster. You don't even, I think you see maybe it's, like, leg, maybe? But at least with, like, in the second film, like, with the safe haven, the one that it's, like, a little bit longer, that one is, like, you get to see, like, more of the monster, and, like, I feel like that was, like, the whole thing, is that they were summoning this thing, and we didn't even get to see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being ridiculous and dumb, but I just wish this film would have been better. There's a lot of problems with it, and, I mean, you can kind of see that happening with the second one. Like, some of the stories are a little meh, and, they always have to have, like, one or two that's, like, not as good as, like, some of the other ones that stand out. Like, Safe Haven is an amazing one. I actually like the alien one where with getting them abducted, and the zombie one where it's the guy riding the bike and he turns into zombie. Like, okay, see, like, you can forget that one, but it still works on its own. And this one, if you were to make, like, a movie of, like, these, like, the parallel one would probably work by itself, and I think the magic one, but I don't know about the last one. I think you would have to get a little bit more into it and, like, explain, like, some more about, like, what they're trying to accomplish with resurrecting this devil demon, because they end up dying and turning into skeletons anyway, so they're just dead skeletons. That's what they were trying to get to. Whatever. I know I'm being dumb by trying to bring logic into this movie, and maybe I just don't get it. But this one was just like, all right, if they don't make any more, like, I get it. I can see why. This just doesn't make me want to see another. Like, it didn't make me want to see, like, another one if it was going to be like this. And then, just this past year, we got a new VHS. And that one is VHS 1994.
Where did you find that tape?
Secret compartment. He recorded everything.
See you on YouTube.
Welcome to the show.
Oh my God, turn it off. It's not funny.
Keep going. We could edit that out.
Get inside, it's not safe out here. Oh, daze your ass if you don't get inside right now.
VHS 94 is a 2021 American found footage anthology horror film and the fourth installment in the VHS franchise. The film originates from a screenplay written by David Bruckner and Brad Miska, with segments directed by franchise returnees Simon Barrett and Timo Giajanto, in addition to newcomers Jennifer Reeder, Ryan Prose, and Chloe Okuno. The overarching plot follows a brutish police SWAT team who stumbles upon a sinister cult compound and its collection of VHS tapes. The film segments are presented as a series of cassettes found by the SWAT team members in the frame narrative, Holy Hell, as they advance through an abandoned warehouse containing remnants of a ritualistic cult mass suicide. So this time the prologue / frame narrative, the wraparound story, whatever you want to call it, is called Holy Hell. It's written and directed by Jennifer Reeder. A white-dressed woman inhales vapor from a white, goopy substance on her hands. Later, the same woman, with her eyes gouged out, counts down from 10 in a staticky voice as another woman passes behind her. A SWAT team consisting of Slater, Arsler, Sprayberry, Spivey, Petro, and Nash, and their cameraman Gary, raid a warehouse during what they believe to be a drug bust. They find a private jet behind the warehouse. A distorted female voice emanates from the speakers. All are welcome. All are watching. Finally, followers, tonight is the night you've been waiting for. Track my signal. The signal is the stimulant. The signal is the sedative. The signal is salvation. As the officers charge through the tight corridors, they discover multiple prison cell-like rooms with television sets displaying static. They spot a man sitting in one of the rooms, but as the officers order him not to move, they realize he is dead, with his eyes gouged out, and the white goopy substance, the drug the SWAT team is after, dripping onto the floor. Advancing through the warehouse in search of suspects, a team encounters the room seen in the VHS tape and encounter more dead cultists. Slater orders to search the upper floor with blue team while the remaining officers going as one of the televisions begin to play a newscast. So the first segment is called Storm Drain, written and directed by Chloe Okuno, and it looks like the Veggie Masher commercial, which will appear later, was directed and edited by Steve Konstanowski. Channel 6 News reporter Holly Marciano and her cameraman Jeff are filming a story about the Rat Man, a cryptid of local legend who has supposedly been living in the town's sewers. After interviewing several of the town's citizens who have reportedly witnessed the creature to gain information, the duo descend into a storm drain, where they find several homeless encampments. While filming, they are approached by a man covered in black slime. Holly tries to interview him, but when he begins to spit up black liquid and murmurs Ratma, they attempt to flee. Before they can make their escape, they are captured by other residents of the sewers. They are then taken deeper into the sewers by the dwellers. The minister of the local church, who Holly had interviewed earlier, appears and announces that a new order will soon begin. He then summons the Rat Man, which is revealed to be a grotesque half-human, half-rat creature dubbed Ratma, that he and the other sewer dwellers worship as a god. Ratma proceeds to vomit black liquid, which the minister pours over Jeff's face, burning him to death. Holly is then brought before Ratma, the creature growling in approval as Holly screams. After a brief infomercial for the Veggie Masher plays, the film returns to the newscast, where Holly's co-anchor explains that she was rescued from the storm drain and has returned to work at the station, though Jeff is still missing. Holly gives her next report, unwittingly substituting random words with Ratma, confusing her co-anchor. She suddenly vomits the black liquid on his face, burning him to death on air. As the newsroom erupts in panic, Holly revealed to be successfully brainwashed by the sewer cult, cheerfully finishes her report, signing off with Hail Ratma. Back in the frame story, the officers go deeper into the building and come across a room set up to look like a church, with a giant screen on the front and severed mannequins in the seats. The giant screen begins to play video footage from a funeral home. The next segment is called The Empty Wake, written and directed by Simon Barrett. At Jensen Funeral Home, a young woman named Haley is assigned to host a wake for a man named Andrew Edwards. Andrew's family has requested that Andrew's wake be video recorded during the whole night. Haley's boss, Ronald, and another assistant, Tim, leave the building for the night, leaving Haley to pass the time reading. A strong thunderstorm begins outside, causing the power to flicker, and she hears strange noises from the casket, which has moved on the bier. Haley calls Tim and says that she thinks Andrew may still be alive in the casket. Tim quells her worries by explaining that the body is most likely releasing gases that are causing the noises. As the storm worsens, the building begins to occasionally lose power. A strange man who identifies himself as Gustav and claims to be a relative of Andrew arrives to the wake, during which Haley allows him to pay his respects. After uttering an apparent incantation In Hungarian, Gustav thanks Haley for the opportunity and abruptly leaves. Haley then calls her friend Sharon, asking for her to check in the local obituaries for Andrew's name. Sometime later, Sharon reveals to Haley that Andrew had committed suicide by leaping from the roof of a church after shouting gibberish. The power cuts out again, plunging the building into darkness as the noises resume from the casket. Trying to leave, Haley discovers the front doors are chained shut. Returning to the viewing room, she finds the casket tipped over and open. She's attacked by Andrew's reanimated corpse, but because the top of its head is missing, it cannot see her. Hiding behind the casket, she finds the top of Andrew's head. Andrew's functional eyes lock onto her, allowing the rest of the corpse to find Haley. As it attacks the storm, which is turned into a tornado, strikes the funeral home as the camera cuts out. After it passes, Haley, having either been zombified or possessed by Andrew's spirit, rises and crawls through the window. Back in the framing story, the officers discover body parts strewn across the floor, mannequins in the toilet stalls, and upside-down crosses hanging from the ceiling of various rooms. Panicked, they plan to exit the building. As an unknown voice states, "Forever is right now." A television begins to play footage from a bizarre laboratory. The subject, written and directed by Timo Jean-Chantal. In Indonesia, a man wakes up to find his body gone and replaced by mechanical spider legs. He falls from his restraints and catches fire, which is soon extinguished by Dr. James Suhendra, a deranged scientist who desires to create a successful mechanical human hybrid. Using kidnapped humans as guinea pigs, he carries out a lobotomy on a young woman with the initials SA, referred to as Subject 99, using a circular saw, and sedates a restrained young man, referred to as Subject 98, after he wakes up early. Both experiments are successful. Subject 98 becomes a large robot with spring-powered blades for arms, and SA becomes a functioning cyborg that responds to speech. The rest of the tape is mostly presented from her point of view. James celebrates SA's success, and a news report states that the rash of recent disappearances are driving a wedge between the police and the public. James is suspected of kidnapping his patients, and SA's old self is shown on screen. James remarks on how she still recognizes her old appearance. James attempts to wipe SA's memories. SA wakes up during the procedure and hits James before attempting to undo her restraints. James beats SA repeatedly with a metal tray, and her battery life drops before he is interrupted by a knock at the door. A team of heavily armed police officers have arrived to arrest James. James throws a blanket over SA as the officers break in, as the tape cuts to timid cameraman Jono's feed. After the commander confirms that James is their suspect, the police shoot him dead and begin hunting the lab for survivors. They discover SA and argue over whether she should be killed or kept alive, as she is not classified as human anymore, despite technically being a survivor. A sudden blackout occurs in the lab, and Jono witnesses SA escape but does not say anything. Another officer attempts to shoot the door lock and free the group, but triggers an explosion. As the group come to, an alarm begins to sound, and James' contingency plan begins. Over a speaker, James states that his creation is his alone, and that those who try to take it from him shall die. Subject 98 awakens and slaughters most of the soldiers. Jonah and the commander survive after the commander hurls a grenade at 98. SA comes to and flees through the building, being shot at by the surviving officers and chased by 98. She locks herself in a small office room and finds blueprints for her cyborg body and cannon arm, along with the upper half of her head and face preserved in a jar of formaldehyde. She approaches a mirror and sees her new form for the first time. Enraged, she punches the mirror and breaks it. After leaving the room and coming across more of James' failed experiments, SA fights her way through the building, slaughtering any soldier she comes across in self-defense. She discovers Jono behind the door and spares him after he begs for his life and promises to help her out of the lab. Suddenly, the commander appears and shoots SA before beating her. Jonah grabs a gun and shoots the commander dead before being attacked by Subject 98. With her battery critically low, SA uses the last of her strength to tear out 98's brain, killing it. She collapses next to a heavily injured Jonah, and her battery finally dies. The tape cuts out to a security camera which shows SA standing up on her own accord, escaping from the lab. Back in the framing story is shown that Nash and Petro have kidnapped Spivey. As the rest of the team frantically search for him, Nash states "Forever starts right now." In front of a wall of TV screens, Slater pages his missing teammates over his radio, and Petro states that he should try not to lose his head. Slater suddenly collapses and enters a trance in front of one of the screens, which proceeds to display footage of a snowy, fortified militia enclosure. Terror, written and directed by Ryan Prose. The First Patriots Movement militia are a racist extremist group that are currently plotting to blow up a government building in a bid to take back America. It is shown that they live in a well-secured compound in a deserted area somewhere in Detroit, Michigan. The compound has room for security cameras as well as a heavily protected small room covered in wooden crosses. In the latter room, a man is chained up and kept prisoner. Bob, the group's cameraman, Greg, the group leader, and Chuck, a group member, enter the room. The man pleads for his life, and Greg shoots him at point-blank range. The film cuts to one of the group's propaganda videos where Greg explains that the group intends to purge evil from America. Members of the group set out in a car and drive past the building which they plan to blow up, surveying the site for security cameras and possible entry points. Back at the compound, Slater from the framing segment arrives to supply guns and ammunition to the group. Asking if they have tested the creature, it is shown that the group regularly shoot the man who is revealed to be a vampire and siphon his blood, which becomes explosive when exposed to sunlight, planning to use said blood instead of a bomb. Wanting to test if their plan works, they inject a rabbit with some of the vampire's blood and cage it. When the sun rises, the rabbit explodes. In celebration that night, the group drink heavily and party. Bob enters the compound and visits Steve, who is sitting in the security camera room. The pair visits the vampire's corpse, and Bob goads Steve into kissing it. The head falls forward and showers Steve in blood as Bob laughs. The next morning, an emergency bell rings and alerts the members of the group. Greg berates Jimmy, who was supposed to be on duty guarding the compound. Jimmy runs towards a body behind the truck, discovering it to be Terry, his neck having been badly gored. Suddenly, crashes come from inside the compound, and the group realizes that they are missing Steve. Greg calls for Steve just as a severed head is thrown out of the compound entrance as roars sound from inside. A member begins firing a truck-mounted machine gun on the compound, losing control due to the sway and killing some of the group in the process, and is shot in the head by Tom when he is unable to stop. Steve then tumbles out of the compound covered in the vampire's blood, promptly exploding once he steps into the daylight. The remaining members of the group, Greg, Tom, Bob, and Jimmy, vow to kill the vampire. They enter the compound and discover the creature hiding in the attic. It tears Tom's face off, and Greg shoots wildly at it. In the attic, the vampire kills Jimmy by slamming his head on the floor repeatedly, and Bob shoots at it, missing and shooting Greg in the leg. Bob is attacked by the vampire, dying after his face is bitten off. Greg, repeating the phrase, "Christ is King," is dragged by the vampire into the cage. It then opens up the attic window and lets in sunlight, causing the vampire to explode and the compound to be destroyed. So this is the epilogue to Holy Hell. The majority of the SWAT team are now dead, their eyes having been gouged out. Slater is tied to a chair by Petro and Nash, who call him out for supplying the militia in the previous video with guns. The women explain that they are members of the snuff fetish film cult that has been operating out of the warehouse, where they create and distribute videotapes depicting animal cruelty, cannibalism, and other shocking acts of violence. Slater is told that he will be their final kill for this video, whereupon Pietro beats him to death with a video camera. As the film ends, she and Nash believe that this will be their best tape yet and wonder what to call it. Okay, so this one's a little bit interesting. In June 2020, it was announced that a reboot of the VHS franchise was in development, with a fourth installment entitled VHS 94, written by David Bruckner. The film was said to take the franchise in a different direction, with each anthology short film converging for the first time into a unified narrative. The title refers to the year in which the film takes place, 1994, obviously. It was a joint venture between Bloody Disgusting Films, Radio Silence Productions, Cinepocalypse Productions, Studio 71, Raven Banner Entertainment, and Shudder Original Films. Bruckner, who originally directed the fan favorite Amateur Night in VHS, the very first one, was set to direct the wraparound, but he had to drop out due to commitments for doing the Hellraiser reboot that's upcoming. Also, filmmaking collective Radio Silence, who directed the short 10/31/98 in the original film, they were set to direct a segment, but also stepped down to focusing on the Scream sequel that's coming out actually later this month. Unlike the previous entries in the film, where each segment is shot simultaneously with different crews, the filming for this was largely sequential, with 4 out of the 5 shorts, except for the subject, having the same crew, overlapping crew, and were shot in Toronto, Canada. David Bruckner and Simon Barrett had prepared preliminary scripts for the wraparound plot, but those stories were ultimately cut in favor of Jennifer Reeder's script. Alright, so let's just get right into it. We're going to dive on in. So with this one coming out, straight to Shudder, it was released just straight onto Shudder. It wasn't like they were going to have a release in theaters. They weren't going to try and build like some kind of like momentum, like the way some productions like Paranormal Activity did, where they tried it out in different markets first and then distributed nationwide. But honestly, I will say, I'm just going to get it right out there. This is pretty good. I liked it a lot better than the third one, the one VHS Viral. Is it better than the first one? Probably, I don't know. The subject is a very good segment. Like, I really like that one. And the third segment was pretty good with the vampire. Like, as soon as I saw, like, the guy in the cage with all the crosses around, I was like, oh, he's definitely a vampire. But I love that idea of, like, taking, like, this extremist right-wing group and making them into, like, the bad... Well, they're obviously the bad guys in real life, too. But I'm just saying, taking something like a vampire and making it into this kind of, like, with the blood, right? Like, okay, yeah, a vampire would die in the sunlight, right, is, like, what we've been told. So, right, if you would take their blood, obviously their blood would just explode. And that's an ingenious way to make a bomb without, like, having to make a bomb. And, I like the way it's shot, too. And there's just... I love that Jean Gento is supposed to... Or he came back to do this. I like the second story was pretty okay, too. I think it works because it's just kind of a simple story. Like, there's nothing major about it. There's nothing too much to get into. It's just a simple, like, oh, there's a wake, and this girl's trapped, and there's a storm, and there's a zombie, and that's about it. Oh, and even the first story is pretty interesting, I guess. Like, it's an interesting idea. It's not the best, but the creature effect it's not the greatest, but it is pretty cool. I like the way that it looks. At least we're getting to see it a little bit more. Like with Safe Haven, we got to see the monster a little bit more, and unlike in VHS Viral with the skaters and Bone Storm, we didn't even get to see the we saw, like, I think it's leg or something, and that's about it. And it's like, I would like to have kind of seen more of the monster, and I like that we got to see it a little bit more, and, like, it's this kind of cult, and, like, it brainwashes them, I guess, or they are brainwashed. I don't know, but it's still kind of cool. Like it's kind of like this Howling like kind of ending where like oh now like she's spreading it. Oh dang. And I like that it's like a local broadcast because still in like nowadays, yeah, we do have like local broadcasting, but it's become so nationalized as well. Like people tend to not watch. Well, they do watch their local news, but not as much as like national news. But back then, yeah, people were still watching like local news, and it hadn't become like this 24-hour news cycle like it's become now. So there would be people who would have like. It's like this interesting idea of like, oh, like someone recorded it when it was on, and they like kept the tape, and it's like this kind of weird thing happened. Like, look at what I record like from the '90s, and it's like, oh, that's fake, but it's like, I don't know, might be real. Like the kind of like the Max Headroom thing where it like interrupted like the signal one night, like and like just for a few, I think for like a few minutes or like just a couple minutes or something. But like that's kind of interesting to me. Like, who knows like what kind of like interference like local news got like during like the 60s, 70s, 80s into the 90s, because it wasn't until like the 2000 wow I don't even know, I think it was like the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s, that's when we moved over from analog to digital, and it was easier to, well, I mean, it is easy to intervene into like a digital signal, but back then it was harder because, not harder to intervene in the signal, but it was harder to catch that, and to like see, like interference could come from anywhere. So I like this. This one's pretty good. I love to see what they do. I love that Shudder is getting involved, and I love that like they're coming up with better ideas than just like, oh, it's a magician with a cape, ooh, or this wraparound story that makes no sense. Like the one previous just was like all over the place. Like it couldn't even stick to the person that it was like trying to make as like the main character. I still like I know I feel like I'm complaining about it. I mean, because like I did bring up like a lot of good. There are good stuff in VHS Viral, as I said before, but it's just there's just so much bad that just weighs it down, that just comes out of nowhere. That is just like, I mean, it's not that it's like we needed it to be the same as before. We need it to be. It's just it needs to be different enough where it's still interesting. This idea of like, oh, it's viral, haha, it's going viral, so everyone's gonna get killed, haha, viral, doesn't work. I don't think it works. I don't think VHS works on a grander scale. I think it works when you get these stories that are more intimate. That's why I think the first one worked, because like with Amateur Night and with like the 10/31/98, and even into the second one, where with the eye, getting the eye replaced, and you know, even with the zombie cyclists and the aliens, and in this one, you know, with the storm drain and with the empty wake and the subject, these all feel intimate, right? Like more separated from the populace, if that's understandable. Like, I feel like bringing this into the main population ruins the story, because then you're having to explain like, why are all these people dying? Oh, it's going viral, but like why are these people killing? They're not even watching it. Oh, it's the signal. Okay, I get there's a signal, but that's not how signals work, I guess. And then I don't know, like even what it's just like in the whatever. I don't even know if I want to keep explaining it. I'm gonna get off of VHS Viral because there's no redeeming that movie. It's on the bottom of the list. I think I'm gonna put VHS 2 at the top. VHS would probably come in at second, and then VHS 94 in third. But that's not a bad thing. Like one or two, one, and then the fourth one are all still like very high. Like this one has a very high rating, just like the second one does. This has a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. So everyone sees that this new direction that they're going is good. That the way that they were taking it with the third one is just not working. And I like that these people are seeing that. They're bringing in these different directors and the same directors. They're letting them, come back and let them, if they told a good story before, maybe they can tell a good story again. Maybe bring in somebody else that's a first-time director. Some people who are multiple-time directing, just let's see what they got, right? Like bring in somebody new, or bring in somebody old, let's try some things out. I think they need to like look at the stories first instead of just let's just make this movie, and like actually like think like what makes a good intimate like VHS, like what to me what made those first two and the fourth one make sense to me are that these stories seem like they could have happened at some point, like. With the magician one, it's just like there's like all these cutting with like all these different footage with like footage from the police station, footage from like the documentary, footage from this, footage from that, and it's just like it's too many people involved to like, and then even with like that's why I think the parallel monsters one works. I know I said I was gonna get off of it, but that's why I think that one works because it's more intimate. Where even though then it takes it into this world where I think it goes weird a little too much, and even though I like weird. But that being said, this film series is great. I honestly love it. I think you guys should check it out when you have a chance. If you haven't checked it out, honestly, go out and check it out. At least start with the first one, and if you like the way that the first one works, then watch the second one. I would say you don't have to really watch the third one. Because the good thing, too, is these movies don't really connect too much. Like, the first two kind of connect with their wraparound stories a little bit, but not enough. But not enough for you to be like, I have to watch them in order. Honestly, you could start with VHS 94 and be good if that was the only one you wanted to watch. And I applaud these guys, going out, making these short films to put into this collection. And, they kind of, I'm not going to say they revolutionized the way anthology films are, but they sparked their own genre of like these kind of low budget like anthology films that the wraparound story kind of doesn't have to do with anything, and you could just kind of put the stories in there and like take them out, plug them in, plug this here, plug that, and that kind of just sparked the whole thing on. We got a bunch of movies that are just like now just on like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon that are just sitting there that are just like these anthologies that are, for good or bad, they're just kind of there because someone saw VHS and was like, oh, you know what? That's a pretty good idea. We could make this for a very low budget. We shoot at somebody's house. We just call it a whole anthology film. And it works for the most part. So I say go out, watch this, and check out the whole series. My recommendation. This series is honestly, I would give the whole series a B plus or maybe like an A minus. The third one really brings it down, but you have these other three that are really good. So I would honestly say like an A minus, because even with the third one, it's still like, honestly, that one's still genuinely like if you wanted to watch it just to laugh at some of the ridiculousness, yeah, you could. Or, honestly, if you like the third one, like, you could. I know I'm sitting here bashing it a lot, which I probably shouldn't do, because I do love, I genuinely try and give films the benefit of the doubt. I learned how to evolve from, especially in film school, you're kind of around these people who want to seem like, oh, I know what good films are. And they constantly point to some of these films and like, oh, there's less of them because it's not by so and so, and this production company had no involvement in that. And it's like, okay, so like it's still fun to watch these movies. Like, you can still have fun and watch the third one. You can still have fun and watch all of them. You can still have fun and watch half of the movie and then never watch the rest of it again. You can have fun and just go on YouTube and watch the segment. Like, you can enjoy a movie however you want. And that's maybe just a little bit of a rant right there, but whatever. So in conclusion, this series has been up and down, black and white, left and right, all over the place. But in the end, it's a great series. Check it out. And with that, I'm going to say thank you guys for listening to the second episode. I know it's been forever since I brought out that first episode with the first two. And they were supposed to be one episode. I was trying something a little bit different. It's just the holiday season of Thanksgiving and then Christmas and New Year's back to back, and having to deal with family and work and adjusting to a new schedule. It all just like bam hit me all at once. And so now, hopefully, with things calming down, I'll be able to get these out a lot sooner and a lot quicker, and hopefully I'll get ahead of everything. Hopefully I'll be able to not only get this episode out, but then another news episode. And with that, I'll probably try and get a singular movie done. And then I'll start probably working on another franchise. I think that's where I'm going to try and do, like, to kind of balance it out. Maybe give you guys, like, a couple singular films, or maybe movies with, like, one or two, like, two or three as a franchise. But I do want to get into like a deeper dive of like some franchises like this, where there are multiple parts. I was thinking maybe Friday the 13th, but not sure yet. I know Scream I want to do. Really, that's what I think is going to be coming up too, for this month, because the new movie, the fifth film, is coming out. Scream. It's just called Scream. So I might do the first two, the second, or the first two, the third and the fourth, and then the new one as a singular review. Hopefully I can try and do that, get that out for you guys. But in the meantime, yeah, I'll get into news, but I want to hear what you guys want. Tell me what you guys want. Go on to Instagram, shoot me a message on there. I'm at the Horrorbox podcast. You can DM me on there, comment on a post. If you like, you can reach out to us on email at horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know on there. Is there anything you want me to review? Is there anything you want me to talk about? Any news you want me to talk about? Is there any horror that you want me to just go into at all? Like, that I haven't stepped my foot into? I can try more different stories as well. If you have any stories out there that are like spooky and creepy or just weird, like, I love hearing all those and I love talking about them. So let's get into it. But until then, guys, hopefully you guys had a good New Year and a safe Christmas and a happy Hanukkah, or whatever else you celebrate, if you celebrate anything, or maybe you don't celebrate anything and you just look forward to having family around during the winter time. But moving into this new year, yeah, hopefully we'll get more content out for you guys. But till then, have a spooky, creepy year, guys. Hopefully it's not like bad, right? It's just like kind of scary. But then we'll see what comes out from the Horrorbox.